Some of the small details in the scriptures seem rather curious, such that we might wonder why they were even put there at all. And surely this passage from St. John's Gospel contains one of those curious things, always to me, I know, as the evangelist takes extra care to make note that the disciples' encounter with Jesus actually in the original language says came at the 10th hour of the day, but we translate that to about 4 in the afternoon. Perhaps we could simply dismiss that as a curious detail, or say that it's mentioned because that would mean it was coming closer to the customary close of the workday in the first century, which was at 6 p.m. That might then explain why the two wanted to know where Jesus was lodging in order that they might stay with him for the evening and night, because obviously they were far from their homes in Galilee. Yet somehow it is much more than a small detail, and it might call us to reflect on time itself in our particular Christian understanding of it, borrowing terms and concepts from the ancient Greeks, a culture and language in which the Christian faith first took root and grew. Time can be seen in one of two ways, either as chronos or kairos. From chronos, obviously, we get the familiar word chronology. And so chronos is the concept of sequential time, the phenomenon that days turn to weeks, weeks to months, months to years. Indeed, chronos is that great conveyor belt that takes us from youth to old age, from birth to death. The fundamental concept of chronos, then, is the quantity of time, which most of us feel is never quite enough of. Thus, that is the time that truly flies. In contrast to that, kairos is a richer and deeper concept of time, but simply said, it is quality time rather than quantity. Indeed, it is the right time for something important, profound, or meaningful to take place. Thus, it is kairos more than chronos that is operating when we are told in the scriptures that it was in the fullness of time that the Word took flesh and dwelt among us, or that at 3 o'clock on a Friday afternoon, Jesus said, "It is finished," as he bowed his head and handed over his spirit. Kairos is God's timing. Thus, all the events of salvation history occur according to kairos more than chronos. So then, as in this gospel passage, those two seekers of the Messiah meet Jesus and decide to stay with him that evening. It is more than just another evening beginning at 4 p.m., but one in which their whole beings and the course of their entire lives will be changed profoundly and forever as they become his disciples. So then will the same experience occur for Peter the next day, as well as for Philip and Nathanael, if we would read beyond the confines of this particular passage selected for today from St. John. So as we listen to the Kairos experiences of those original disciples that have been preserved for us by the evangelists, we might readily think of some others as well, from the lives of saints down through history. Augustine, pursued by his pious mother, all the way from Hippo in Africa, until one night in Milan in northern Italy, he finally accepts God. Ignatius of Loyola, converted as he's confined at length to his room, recovering from a serious injury. Elizabeth Bailey Seton, an Episcopalian, finds the fullness of Catholic faith when unexpectedly she becomes widowed while traveling in Italy. Teresa of Calcutta finds a vocation within her vocation by encountering one day a destitute man dying on the floor of the crowded railway station where she is waiting for a train. The lives of these and so many saints record events that occurred in time, but Chronos quickly became Kairos as their faith was either newly found or brought to a far deeper level, and their lives were changed forever, and the world made all the better because of that. Most importantly, today's scriptures are familiar passages from both the Old and New Testament that remind us how God, even more than ourselves, is ever the seeker, the one diligently searching for us, who keeps calling us and patiently waits through our confusion or our hesitation or even our rejection for that Kairos moment when we finally respond wholeheartedly to his call. And then our hearts, minds, and lives are changed profoundly in accord with his plan to save us and the world through us. So today, we are being encouraged to look back on our own lives and identify those times when it was, in a sense, 4 p.m, in the sense that events or encounters occurred in the course of our lives that transformed us. Yes, certainly, the celebrations of the sacraments we received, no doubt, are Kairos moments. But also, maybe even things that shook our faith to the core, only then to deepen it, or moved us from unbelief to deep belief, or from doubting Christ's divinity to becoming his real disciple. Thus, as we revisit these occurrences, we can be reassured that no less than the original apostles or saints before us, we too experience time not only as Chronos, but especially as Kairos. Truly, even every time we gather here in prayerful worship and try to listen to the Lord speak to us by attending actively to the readings, and then opening our eyes in faith to try to recognize Christ as truly present here in the breaking of the bread as he has promised to be. Indeed, if we make every effort to meet Christ here just as he desires us to encounter him, then we experience this time as Kairos. Otherwise, it's Chronos, just another hour on another Sunday morning. So Mass and other opportunities frequently offered to us by Christ to meet him and to remain with him can merely be Chronos, or they can be truly Kairos, depending on our attitude and our response. We know what he wills, But are we always willing to meet him at least halfway? If so, then let's reset our watches to 4 p.m. and say, "Here I am, Lord. I come to do your will."